To record. Hey Jesse, how are you?
Hey guys, I'm trying to get to you, but I'm on the med bike. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Safety first. We've got 2 out of the 3 of us here, so you drive carefully. Don't stress about us.
Take it easy. Take it easy.
But we are
turn off my
recording.
camera. But I'm here. No, you don't want to see me driving anymore.
No. All right, go ahead, sir.
I think as we go through the meeting with all the formality, the first thing, general business we can do.
Absolutely.
Why don't we, if we could, Jesse, and we'll have, since you're remote, we'll have to do it by roll call. Do we approve the minutes from the last meeting provided to us by James? I reviewed them.
Okay, good.
Hopefully, Jesse, you did.
Did.
The ones he sent out. And I'd like to have a motion.
And well, actually, before that, I did go back and watch the video a second time because that was a lot in that meeting.
Yeah.
So I tried to make sure I really captured everything I could. So I think we're squared away, but I'll present a motion to accept the meeting minutes from our last meeting.
I second.
Right.
All in favor or discussion, excuse me, any discussion?
No discussion for myself.
Okay.
Any discussion, Jesse?
Sure.
Okay.
All in favor to accept, and you'll have to announce each other because one's remote.
James Thatch, aye.
Bill Sipley, aye.
Jesse Curl,
Awesome.
Okay, that's a
Thank
little
you.
housekeeping. Thank you, Jessica. Okay, with the agenda moving forward, we're going to pass on Jeremy's 2 items
Okay, perfect.
if he comes in, and then we're going to move to the review trustees, or TAF trustees record discussion.
Perfect. Then what I will do, and let's see if I can actually do this right. I have the button that says share. I'm going to share the presentation. I can, thank you. And let me see. Must be big enough. That's weird, and not like that. Can everyone, actually, Carl, since you're on, can you see the presentation?
Yes, the slide is now on the purpose for study slide. Now it's back to the opening slide.
Beautiful, thank you for verifying. So before we get kicked into this, if I may do a couple of introductions. I'm sitting here wearing 2 hats today. Hi, everyone. For you who don't know, I'm James Thatch, Vice Chair here for the Capital Planning Committee and Vice Chair for the Rectory Subcommittee, along with a trustee for the libraries. So we've been working for a while, but first, go ahead.
Gabrielle Porcello, Vice Chair, Chairperson for the Rectory Subcommittee and Vice Chair for the TAF Library Trustees.
Perfect. And then, yeah, we can keep going around. Everyone knows.
Andrew Kendrick, I'm the library director over at TAF.
Excellent.
Sean Nicholson, I'm on the library trustees and also the mendonma school committee.
Beautiful. Excellent. Thank you. Please.
PR from the Council on Aging.
Excellent.
Amy Wilson-Kent, Senior Assistant Director.
Excellent.
Bill Sipley, a number of different things, and the chair of this.
Yes, perfect. So some time ago, we sat down and had an opportunity to get a wonderful grant from the state to do a feasibility study for the rectory.
Yeah.
And through that process, we've come to where we are right now. So I'll run the slides, but I'll kick it off to you.
Perfect.
The first thing I'd like to add to that, though, too, you're the first team coming in with a presentation for a capital plan or future plan. I think that's excellent. This group to be able to see what your thinking is and be able to ask questions of you is very important to us. So you're launching off, I think, a format that we'll be using not only for this, but future departments as they come forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to James for creating the
Just during the podcast. And I will say, Gay and I and a bunch of the team have pulled together this as truly like a draft to try to figure out what's the good way to get information forward and really kind of start that conversation.
Right.
So-
We started as a working group over a year ago and then formed a subcommittee. So we've been working on it for quite some time now.
Perfect.
All right, so I know it's hard to read on the screen, I apologize, but the purpose for our feasibility study is we're looking to expand the Taft Public Library through adaptive reuse of the existing rectory building that is attached to the library. allowing for a larger program space to accommodate the large attendance numbers in our current programs, as well as much needed additional storage space. This expansion will also provide quiet study areas and closed-door meeting space for the community, which is not currently available in the open floor plan of our existing library space. Some challenges with our existing library space. Again, the photos are a little bit hard to see. Oh, look at that.
Well, yeah, but for those smoke, I have to go back and forth.
Oh,
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
okay.
But for us, we can see a little better.
Okay, so for the challenges we face are lack of storage, minimal quiet area during programs, public safety concern when close to reaching our capacity and meeting areas during popular programs, and limited use of the periodical area during programs. So many of you have been to the actual library that we have now, and you know that our space is limited, especially when we have a large number of people in there. This first photo, the larger photo, is a picture of our children's librarian's office, which basically, as you can see, also acts as storage for programming. The smaller photo, that one there that James is pointing at, is our storage room in the downstairs of the library, but it also acts as a janitor's closet, and we have all of our chemicals and cleaning supplies in there, along with all of the other library storage materials. The other space is showing, other photo is showing a recent program that was done at the library. Very well attended, and as you can see, it takes place in the periodical area, which doesn't allow for much space for, this one happened to take place after hours, but many times we have younger children's programming that takes place in the same area of the library during regular business hours, and other patrons that want to come and just sit and read the paper or pick up a magazine, or in the back corner of the electronic books on tape and things like that, they really can't access that during a program. It's you know, some people might find that inconvenient. And
Oh,
oh,
I got stuck.
also, while you're doing that, also, if you've been to the current library during, you know that the open floor plan, the sound really travels, whether there's one person talking at a normal voice or there's 40 or 50 kids running around during a story time program or a music program.
Sorry, everybody online. I apologize for this bumping back and forth. I don't know. I pressed a button and I screwed it up.
Automation.
All right, everyone on the line, hold on just 1 second. I'm gonna pop out of this and try to pop back in.
Andrew, what's your capacity for upstairs and downstairs? What are you use?
Typically 25, but, you know.
You mean what our max capacity that we're allowed?
Yes, yes.
It might be a bit more than 20. I want to say maybe.
I think it's 50 upstairs. I don't know about downstairs. In the meeting space area, I think we had discussed like 50 is our absolute max. And we've definitely come close to reaching that, if
Oh, yeah.
not,
Absolutely.
And
if not
downstairs-
exceeded.
And downstairs?
I'm not exactly
Say
sure
it's
what downstairs.
probably close to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
40,
It's very-
40.
Okay, so challenge, current condition of our existing space, current conditions of the unused space. That building has town-owned unused space, has been vacant for 10+ years. The interior and exterior continue to deteriorate. Repairs are needed, as well as we've already put some money, not a large amounts, but some money into repairing the roof and things of that nature, just to kind of keep it going. As you can see some of these photos, again, they're hard to see on the screen, but the ceiling is really deteriorating due to some leakage that we had in the chimney area, which we have since repaired. But that doesn't mean that it's not gonna, we did repair some flashing and some other shingles and stuff up near the chimney area, but around the chimney, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to eventually start to give way again. So that was just a couple of shots of the ceiling. This big photo on the bottom, the larger photo on the bottom is the rear of the building, which is quite an eyesore. And when people do come up to see, you see this beautifully new not new, it's 10 years old now, but this beautifully new building painted and everything. And then you see this eyesore next to it that's just sitting there, but we can't do anything with it because, you know, it's not, I mean, it's attached, but it's not really attached because there's no entranceway anymore. They blocked it off. So the next slide just shows some other interiors of the existing rectory building. I'm sure many of you have been in it at some point or another, but basically it's just a mess. It has not been kept up. The rugs, the carpets are still the same carpets that the church used, and which God only knows what's, you know, what their condition really is. I'm sure there's mold and mildew and stuff like that. We haven't done any testing of that nature. The basement has all the old stuff in it, like the old furnace, but there's also so the library, tell me again what's housed in there that is used, the water heater is housed in this rectory space that feeds into the existing building. So they kept that in that space. So that is the only area of the rectory building that has heat, so that it can, obviously it has to maintain to a certain temperature for the water heater and things. But obviously all of the electrical and, you know, everything else that's down there is just very old. I took a picture of the bathroom. I don't know why, but I was just kind of like, not that we would even keep the bathroom, but
It's a point though.
but it does. It's disgusting. You know, none of us would want to, you know, the point that I took these photos were more that this is just sitting there. The longer it sits there, the worse it's going to get. So someone either needs to use it or we need to tear it down, and tearing it down is not an inexpensive cost either. And then, you know, then you still have to do something. So you know, that's lots of things. Do you want to talk about floor plans?
Happens.
Go for it.
So we, as many of you will know, because you've been around the town for a while, we had a feasibility study done 5 or 6 years ago now.
Oh, that's the old one. Yeah.
When we had that bigger question, like, well, what could be done in the space where the rectory building is? And that was, that study was done kind of giving carte blanche of like, hey, you tear the flooding down, you could do whatever you want with it, and see what comes out of those designs. That all happened, and, you know, COVID, so, hey, challenges occurred. And at the time, both within the town and with everything else, there wasn't a smart fiscal position for that to move forward anywhere. Time does not slow down. So we are now here, and we, you know, really saw that this just starting to not fall down, but it is in disrepair. And an option needs to happen. So we made the parameters pretty clear when we sat down with the architecture firm, the engineering firm, and said, we're not looking to build something huge. The goal is, if the building is sound, what can we do with the building? So we wanted to figure out, using that footprint, is it even possible to rehab the insides, fix it up, or do something different? And we were very fortunate to be able to get the 25K grants from the state to say, yep, look at it from that perspective. Let's get a better understanding of what this really is. So we worked with the contractors to build it around the community space. So program space and community space. We have a unique library where we're an active community. We have a lot of fun things and events happening in the library. It is sometimes it's nice to give folks space where they can still be quiet space in the library and still have those fun, active things occur. So they looked at the floor plan and said, here's a couple ideas, and here's what we recommend. It gives us access. It connects directly from one building to another. So they designed a ramp system that's a ADA compliance, gentle ramp designed for wheelchair access, which would go through the wall of the ancestry room and then go directly over the building. But it would allow us to seal it off so that it doesn't have to always be open, and like the main library doesn't have to have someone in it while someone could be using this space. That then comes into the main first floor area, which would be an open program community space. Table designs, you know, pretty much anything you need to do, whether it's all the different kids programs happening, adult reading, or anything else, it would allow us to have space there. It is a little small. You can probably see it better on your designs. For those online, if you see my mouse over here, the one thing you'll notice that isn't in the footprint The existing footprint of the building is the gray section towards the top of the floor plan. And that shows a set of stairs and a modified elevator. It's not a true elevator. It's a
Lula.
a raised, design that's kind of like an elevator.
Similar to the lift, that, well, this is very old, but similar to the lift that is in this building, correct? Where it goes from one floor to the next. The Lula system, obviously it's more up to date, but will accommodate all of the floors in the new building.
Correct. And then if you imagine that you had the small garage that's directly attached to it, that then becomes additional program space. So they really looked at it as, hey, how do we maximize that floor plan to give us what we need? Small kitchenette, study room, restrooms in there as well, and additional storage.
How much square footage are we looking at?
Total for the building was what, 2,200 feet, somewhere right around there, and I may be misquoting, I apologize. And then, but actually, as we kind of move through, we obviously set the parameters with the architect engineers. Everything needs to be ADA compliant. We need to be adherence to all state, federal, local laws to make sure we're meeting all the requirements.
And by just connecting the buildings, you don't have the impact of current building,
So
other than a wall.
a wall, a door, and access. There are some other questions that come down the road, which we can talk about a little bit more, but yeah, really good point. So the next one, this is the basement floor plan. So just like the current library, you have, a first floor and a basement. That rectory building has a first floor, basement, then also a second floor. So looking at the basement, again, idea is we're talking open space, community space. So you can run programs, have storage, but still also keep some quiet time space for study rooms, all of the required utilities, whether electrical, water heater system and everything else would be down there, and make sure that it's all set. And again, because the backside of the building, the backside of the property slopes off, the basement egress, exit and entrance is ground level. That's on the backside. So when we're talking about access, we both have ground level access there, access from the library itself, and then, front door access, as if it was to go forward.
On the schematics in your feasibility study, we don't have a total square footage of the floor, but there is each
One of
space has its own square footage on that, which you should be able to read.
And then the final schematic is just the second floor. It's really designed to be pretty limited. We wanted it to be modular, so some of it does. And it's the old bedrooms and whatnot that are up there. So you don't have a ton of space up there, but enough for potentially offices, or study rooms, or at least some quiet space. You could have some storage up there if we had a lot of back and forth with the architects, because we didn't want to be the concern of the Lula and the lift and how we move things up and down. If we're moving a lot of books up and down, obviously that's a fair bit of weight. So we want to be very smart about how we do that. So,
the loop goes all the way to the second floor?
yep, all floors,
Yeah.
from basement to second floor.
Good.
The original proposal that came to us was with a lift, but then the more we talked about having that second floor, they came back to us and said, we found out that the lift can't go to all 3 floors, so you have to go to this next system called the Lula. And that's kind of where that came in.
And but it is a step down. It's not a full elevator, so it's not like you have to build the whole shaft and the rest of the mechanics that go with it. It is almost a self-contained unit.
Right.
From my understanding.
Yeah.
I'm not an engineer, I'm a geologist. So, that, again, all of that being said, the intent was use existing floor plan. They then, on some of the pictures, you can see the mock-up differences. This extra part that would be on the back is the only additional part of the building, again, stairwell and Lula, and then the rest is staying within the footprint. We recognize where we are as a town about both making sure we're using the resources we have and trying to be very smart about how to reuse what we can. And we're not blind to understanding the needs of the town when it comes to senior centers, the building and the process that they're going through there, the needs that exist within the school systems. And you know, even further across, you know, the fire station and other questions that we've already seen come up with us.
Right.
So we wanted to try to be aware of that, be smart of it, and really have a smart evaluation. The last thing, this is just a draft version. Oh, yeah, we got 5 years out there. So thank you. We, as a capital planning group, we had briefly talked about a couple different slides or designs of like how to capture costs, timelines, information about the project. So this is a brief little snapshot. I think it needs a little bit more cleaning up about what this is and where in theory, we were thinking of how this could fall into our budgets, larger budget cycle that exists within the town. We recognize that this is not something we're pulling the trigger on tomorrow. The costs came in to rehab the inside of the building at $1.8 million. Now, per square foot, that came to about between $500 and $600 per square foot to rehab. New construction costs right now per square foot sitting at about $1,000. So we're, in some respects, if we can stick within a design that's like this, we could be saving the town some money to be able to reuse what exists there. The engineering firm also put in a 15% buffer zone or markup, which brought us up to like around the 2.1 or 2.2 kind of $1 million mark. A couple of things that are also on here that we recognize we need to do. If this, actually, agnostic of whether we choose to go down the road of rebuilding this or demolishing it, we don't want it to fall down in its own place. We want to make sure that we actually figure out how structurally sound it is or what fixes we really need to do. So we did get a separate cost for a building analysis, like a true, like, hey, do we need to replace windows so we don't have any more mold or other weather issues that are coming in? What are those types of things?
So it's a $10,000,
Correct. So that's the $10,000.
which needs to be done no matter what, in my opinion.
Unless
Unless they officially decide to demolish it, then yes.
and then if it's demolished, then so be it. Then that's, you know, that's just becomes space and we figure out what that cost is.
Parking lot.
It's a parking lot because that's the other part that comes out of this.
Yeah, I know.
You'll notice that when we really start talking about, you know, design and, you know, getting an engineer on staff or the process of moving there, we're not thinking next year or the year after. We're looking at, you know, 2030 or 2031 because we want to be smart about how that cycles. And if we want to present to capital planning a smart process and timeline, we recognize that that's not something we can just pull a trigger on.
Correct.
Now, I think that's our last slide.
That's all it's
That's
like,
all.
yes.
So, question from a capital standpoint.
Yeah.
What would you be looking to put on the capital plan moving forward? With these dates and these times and the dollars? Did you, just as your requirement,
So from
not necessarily the capital planning requirement?
the library trustees, we would request to put this forward at one, to be able to do the analysis, internal analysis at 10K to make sure we can really figure out what we need to do. And then to project this forward for those fiscal years. And that would be, again, these numbers are also going to change over the next couple of years. We recognize that. So we're trying to be smart of including where the buffer could be and how much. So yes, from a subcommittee perspective, and then also from like our full trustee group, we would put that forward and say, this is where we think this project could be. We don't currently have the capital in the library to be able to say, let's move forward and do this, which is why we present it here to this committee. And then I put on my other hat.
On the other hand,
Yes.
Good question.
Are there, the last time I visited this whole body of information, are there systems inside of directory space that the new library space depends upon?
Yes.
Yes,
The water heater system. So if there was demolishment of the building, we would still need to accommodate and do a retrofit to the existing library to support those requirements.
Okay.
And that's, you know, again, no matter which path we go down, there's going to be cost on all the sides.
Water heater and the well?
The well is separate,
The well is separate. I
but the
believe.
plumbing comes over to that side, so it would be rerouting of plumbing, movement of water heater, and then the supporting systems for that.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, the rectory, that has no historical importance in the town, does it?
So,
It's
we've gone back and forth. In the very beginning, when we were still a working group, we had, Jane Lowell,
Oh, yeah. sure.
attended a bunch of our meetings. So it's kind of on the cusp. There are definitely ways that they think that they can put forth, if we were, which we kind of talked about with the architect, they didn't show a schematic of the front of the building, but the idea was to keep the facade that exists, because that is probably the most historic part that, people recognize, so I can't remember, I want to say it was the historic line, was that 55 years or?
My brain was,
We went back and forth at the beginning of our working group,
we were, I think the building was right on the cusp.
right on the
of,
cusp,
between
yeah.
The dates, and there's,
Potentially, it'll be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes you.
Well, yes, that's why we brought Jane into the picture for it.
The building was built in the fifties.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the exact year.
Yeah.
It might be 55.
I want to say maybe it was 55, and then, so we were right on the cusp of that, so that there were definitely avenues that we could go down to possibly tap into some of those funds that could potentially be available.
That's what the police did.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we kind of took that as a model of what they did, with their adaptive reuse or whatever you want to call it. So we kind of followed their
Yeah.
footprint. But yeah, so there's definitely, opportunity for that. There's possibly even opportunity for, CPA funds, which we're still exploring. We've been exploring the whole time, but again, we're not at that stage yet that, maybe we'll have some, millionaire come in and say, James is on that.
I keep hoping, I keep-
Well, this is it, but put my name on it and I'll pay for it.
Only million.
Well,
Millionaire couldn't
I
afford it.
really, well, you know what I mean. Don't you have some neighbors?
Hold on one second. Go ahead, Jesse.
I was just saying a millionaire can't afford 2 million.
Oh.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
A couple of questions about the numbers you want us to place onto the, because your goal is to get this on a financial plan, capital plan,
Correct.
with some numbers. So I want to talk about the numbers for a little bit. As far as the construction funds, you have 1.853. Did they do a cost analysis, or just a architect view of what this would cost?
No, they did a full cost
analysis,
and
which is in the feasibility study.
Yep, and in there, it actually breaks down all the way down to material. So that's how they came up with
Okay, so
what
that was my
what the
question.
square footage
Okay,
cost was. Yeah.
You're comfortable with that? Right, of course, furniture equipment. And then the other question, contingency, that's a matter of, yeah, that's fine. So I guess your cost price was what I was questioning about. Now, did they look at the building and consider any possible mold, contamination?
They did an engineering look through it. They didn't do, as far as I recall, a lead or asbestos analysis yet.
No,
The study didn't have that scope. From a mold perspective, they didn't look at it. But the way that they were planning, at least how it was discussed to us on the gutting and the process of the rebuild, that would be, if there was that concern, it would be alleviated in the process of that rebuild.
Okay, and the $10,000, go ahead.
Can I just jump in first? For the record, there's no known mold in the building. Anybody's suspicion is just organic growth that they're seeing or smelling. There's been no testing.
That's correct, absolutely.
Correct.
There's no mold, right?
Just
correct. And I was actually just in there the other day, and except for the fact that it's freezing in there, and it was probably one of the coldest days we had that I chose to go over and take some pictures, but, yeah, it's just, it smells musty because it's an old building and not used, but
That's fine.
But
The other
the
question-
the asbestos, for instance, would incur costs on the breakdown or the demolition of the space.
Correct.
As a build new as well, so you have to consider that in that terms.
Correct.
It's not just that it'll be there, it's that you have to pay for taking it out.
Yep, absolutely. And that was when they built the cost, they built the cost to execute today. And that's why they also included the 15% market or buffer to at least to say there are variables we don't have answers for yet. So we don't want to say it's only going to be 1.8 whatever. We want you to recognize that you're talking about this is your lucky, this is your, potentially your likely. So how do you make sure you cover that perspective? Go ahead, Jesse.
I'm sorry. My original question goes back to the beginning, I think, which is, I believe I heard there was a grant of $25,000. That's the grant that paid for this study that was provided by who? State?
By the state. So yes, that 25K came from the state. It was an earmark. And that paid for the feasibility study.
Who was your
That's
architect?
how much it cost? Was 25,000?
The feasibility study, that's correct, yes.
Okay. And did they give a menu? It sounds like there was one plan put forward. There was no menu that they gave you pricing for, which was like option A, do this, option B, demolish.
So-
Was it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jesse. They did give us a menu, but the menu was active during the feasibility study. So we had multiple meetings with them, refining our requirements or what we presented as the requirements from the library. And that's why it ended up being, here's what's recommended for use of the existing space. Did that make sense?
I don't know that I agree with that, but it makes sense that I understand what you're saying.
Understand. Okay, thank you.
It sounds like your committee did its due diligence to come up with the best possible feasibility for this building and threw away options that didn't make sense. Can I
Yeah,
be that liberal with it?
No,
Yep.
you're absolutely right. And that goes back to 5 years prior where
the original
the
feasibility
original
study.
feasibility study talked about, it being completely ripped out and rebuilding into two different options or made into like an outdoor activity area. So those numbers we recognize do not apply because it's, they're very old numbers. But we were trying to be very, honestly, taxpayer dollar cognizant of using the existing space to make sure it didn't fall down where it stood.
But yeah, the ask was specifically for reuse.
Reuse. Yep.
So this would be a project that Andrew would bring forward as a department lead for this committee. And basically he's doing that here at Vice President's.
Yes, I would actually say that the Taft trustees.
So trustees,
Presenting this forward. So, yeah.
And you'd be the sponsor or something.
I guess, sure.
Between, Andrew and Lisa. So Lisa is the chair for the trustees.
Yeah,
I don't know typically how it works with, the trustees.
But yes, yeah.
yeah, when we get to that point, the subcommittee will then bring forward to the trustees, which would then present it to the town, I would assume.
The other question.
Yeah,
about the
so
building-
if I can, I'll hop in here, everyone. Hi, Jeremy. Sorry, I was
Oh,
a few
hi.
minutes late trying to sign on. So, so as an independently elected board, the trustees can sponsor a warrant article. So you would just whenever you're seeking funding in whatever sort of capacity, you would submit it to me. We would inform the select board and place it on the warrant. So yeah, the sponsoring party would be the Taft Library trustees. Just kind of while I'm talking and while we're talking about funding.
You would be.
You went mute.
Yep, sorry, don't know how that happened. So while we're talking construction costs, or while we're talking money, you have a construction cost of 1.8 million. So what was included in your estimate there was a contingency of 278,000, which is 15% even. What's not in there is escalation. So if we're talking about doing this in 4 or 5 years, we're going to have to include escalation in there. And these are themes you're going to hear when I talk about the senior center shortly. And then what was also not included in that estimate was A&E, so architecture and engineering, which we can ballpark at 10 to 12%. So in the 185 to to $200,000 range. And then it's a public construction project with an estimated construction cost over 1.5 million. So we need an owner's project manager as well. So that's probably another $90,000 to $100,000. So we're looking at $300,000 at least additional in soft costs, and then whatever escalation ends up being, which could be 4, 5, 6, 10% a year, depending on what we're talking about here. So all in, before escalation, we're looking at a $2.5 million project.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Of course. And I want to talk about that $10,000 as well. That was in the maintenance and repair. So that's something I talked to James and Andrew Jenrich, the library director, about earlier about. So I just got a report from Andrew yesterday, day before, sometime this week, about kind of what would it take to assess and button up the building. So if the idea is that we're not going to do this project for 4, 5, 6 years, and we don't want it to be mold ridden and all of that in between here and there. So it's a kind of a building envelope assessment. And then what is it that we need to keep the building from deteriorating between now and when any expenditure on a permanent fix would happen.
And that 10K cost, when we had originally chatted, we were trying to figure out whether we could pull from the existing operating budget and to see if we had funds within the library already to execute that. And I don't think we have an answer on that today, but we are trying to figure that out as well.
So I'll preempt Select Board Member Goddard's point. You have state aid funds. So if you want to access those quickly, you can, the trustees can. The select board and myself are interested in knowing what the trustees and the library's plan is for which is something we've talked about. This is not a new comment, but plan for the state aid account. Not to dictate what the library should or shouldn't do with it, but just as a whole all funds approach to financial management. What's the plan? What do you want to do with that 80 grand? So this year there was cost sharing of the additional hours, which will be absorbed onto the general fund for 27. And I think that's a great use of it. And I think kind of additive things, we were talking about signs and whatnot, that's a great use for it too. But if there's short-term stuff the library wants to do, and that there isn't an immediate additional funding source identified, because squeezing 10 grand out of the operating budget is often difficult. State funds are I think a great option in this realm, because it's that additional thing that a department like Council on Aging or the treasurer or something just doesn't have access to.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Good point. One last question on this, unless there's others. When you build this, presuming you get this all goes through eventually in a plan, it will meet your future growth, your future needs, will meet your parking requirements, will meet your needs for more programming, or is this just it's going to be okay to get there? It's going to help us because it will help.
No. Yeah, that was a big part of this analysis. Was
If they're good for 5 years, 10 years, 25 years?
Well, I mean, parking challenge is the parking challenge, right? No matter where you fit, you only got so much space for cars. But our bigger challenge is that the limitations that exist once we start when the programs are operational. So if someone wants to come in the library and use the library, even just trying to move through the library when we have programs can be challenging. We got a great picture just, I think, yesterday of, the upstairs, the main floor packed and not a parking spot available, which is awesome. That's what we want. We want people there to use it. We want folks to have a safe space to be able to come and access information and see programs. This would give us space to be able to do that and someone to still be able to come use the library. So part of this would be, we were fortunate to be able to get that repaving executed and some of the parking sections redone so we could actually fit more with existing space already. And we would, obviously in this construction and in this process, if it moves forward, that would be one of our other questions as well. Okay. But we're not thinking this is just a cool thing for 5 years. This is a big execution that we're hoping would support the library for a very long time.
Yes, especially with programming space.
Yeah, this is 3 extra programming spaces that all connect independently, so.
Right,
Yep.
and that could not only just be used for library programming space, but could also be used for community programming space, scouts or whoever, seniors, but hopefully the seniors are gonna have their own space, but that it's gonna be available to everybody. So the idea, right, when we built this existing library that we have now, the idea was we were gonna have this meeting space available and that Andrew was gonna have a line out his door waiting for people to sign up, people waiting to sign up for this meeting space. Well, we realized very quickly that it's too open and nobody wants to have their meetings there because it's too open. We have one room that actually can close the door, which is the genealogy room, and even then, we can't really close the door during library hours because we have to have the genealogy room available to people that want to come and use the genealogy materials. So this will really help with that. This will really bring that extra programming space, the extra storage space, allow them to, open up some of the other areas, and then the existing library can, I don't want to say go back to be used as a traditional library, but even when we were in our old building, we were never a traditional library because we were so small that no matter what we did, it was always very loud. But I remember bringing my kids there, and as soon as you walked up those stairs, you didn't talk. I remember that from the old library. So this space in this new library, and we're all very, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it, but we're open. It's a kid's space. We want everybody to have fun. We're not progressive. Thank you. That's the right word. You know what I mean? We're not that traditional library where you go in. And I know there are some patrons that like to come in and sit and read the paper, would prefer it to be a little bit quieter during certain times. And I think they've come to know our schedule, and they kind of come when they need to come, and and they know when to not come. But it shouldn't be like that. They should be allowed to come whenever they want. So if we have this extra space where the noise level is kept to a minimum, or they could still be louder, but you won't hear it on that other space.
Okay.
Yeah, it alleviates noise concerns.
Yeah,
It alleviates the issue of not having closed meeting space at all.
Yeah.
It alleviates the issue of not having closed study space
Mhm.
for individuals, and it certainly alleviates our storage issue.
yeah,
We're very confined in terms of what storage we have. That would definitely allow us to expand out. I look at this as, just in terms of the plan they put forward, it really addresses what we needed to address. I think when you talk about growth of programs and that there's 3 meeting spaces in this new space, it certainly would grow with our programming needs.
Mhm.
I look at it as just
Yeah.
a net positive.
Okay.
And even on the second floor, or third floor, whatever you want to call it, we labeled some of it as office space. Now that obviously, whatever the space is labeled now in the diagrams is, might not exactly be what it is. But the idea was eventually maybe Andrew will be able to expand enough that he's now hiring a young adult librarian, or someone else that's in charge, that may need office space. So at least we have that ability to be able to expand, and then someone else, because currently there's Tara's office and Andrew's office, and then the workroom. So if they were to expand, if we were able to get more hours and expand with more staff, they need to have the ability to have another office space if that's the case.
I think what we're seeing, Jeremy, based on your input too, the $10,000 request for the 26 is more of an operational thing that the town would work with the library with committee.
Yes.
trustees.
Yes,
And
we
that's
weren't
what
bringing that,
anyway.
correct. We were not bringing that forward necessarily as an ask. We were bringing that forward maybe just as we also looked into this, and we're aware that it's something that needs to happen.
So that would be part of what we put forward.
Correct.
The secondary part, we're looking at funds, we look targeting somewhere in the 20, 30, 31 timeframe based on their needs. And that's their request. And we'd probably log that in there, and then we debate that as we go through the other capital plans.
True. And
With the factors that Jeremy brought up with the OPMs and all the other things that are probably not included in the system.
sure, 100%.
So Jeremy, you may be able to help fine tune that number based on your experience and with Andrew?
Yeah, we can work with Jeremy from the trustee, and from the subcommittee section to make sure we button up that number.
So that 2.5 winds up moving up to 3 or some number of projected over time, or more.
Yeah,
Anything else,
and the
Michael?
thing with these estimates is that the only thing you know is that whatever number I give you, it's not going to be that, right? It's like it's going to be something different than that. But getting a realistic number and then having a contingency. So in here, it just says contingency. So at this stage of the project, I would like to see both a design contingency and a construction contingency, and then an escalation. So, and then once you get closer to, 80% DD, 80%, construction documents or 100% construction documents, you can drop that design contingency quite a bit and just keep it as a construction contingency. But right now, so just kind of rule of thumb, not grounded in a lot. I like 20% at early stage in projects, to 10 and 10 for design, 10 for construction. So we'll, if we can gross that to 78 up by 30% or 30, by a third, I think that works. But we'll refine this, and having it in the plan, at 2.5 or 2.7 or whatever we end up at. And then as we get closer in 28 and 29 and 30, and we can spend a little bit of money to re-up the cost estimation. We don't have to redo the whole study again, right? Of course, but we can spend a little bit of money to re-up the cost estimate and then use that for a debt authorization, whether it's an exclusion or not. But for a debt authorization, we need a tight number that includes everything. And then just because you don't get 2 bites at the apple, then add additional couple percent on the ask, and then don't spend it and take a victory lap when you're under budget.
I like your thinking, Jeremy.
Okay, thank you all for presenting. I think that was an excellent. There's some action items to pull forward, and then we'll include it in our planning going forward. And Jeremy, thanks for your advice. And I think it's good to have you guys come in and give us some background and insight.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us see.
Yes, thanks very much.
Cynthia, any thoughts from your standpoint? Any other questions?
No, nothing more, thanks.
Anyone else?
It's excellent.
Okay, thank you, folks. Appreciate it very much. Excellent work.
Thank you. So then I think, with your permission, we can go back up to 3 and 4.
Yeah, why don't we bounce up, and Jeremy, that, I don't know if one of the things we talked about, a while ago was trying to get a short-term and a long-term view plan for whether for financing, where big issues are coming for the town, and potentially debt exclusion. Just give us an overview as a committee, so we would understand as we hear these proposals, how far we should go, how much time and how far we should go.
Yeah, certainly. So this is kind of a soft discussion, and on the presentation, I don't have,
And you don't need that. I think it's just a discussion.
Yeah, so our large projects that we're talking about, and anyone involved here, committee members or not, feel free to jump in. So the large projects we're talking about are I'm going to get into the senior center next, so I'm not gonna senior and community center, so I'm not gonna dive too much into that now. But the large projects we're talking about are the rectory that we just talked about, the Mendon Senior and Community Center. We are looking at a feasibility study on fire station, right? We haven't talked about this too much publicly, but they've had some issues on the roof and gutters and water management and ice dams and that sort of stuff that has percolated into the insulation and apparatus bay in ways that is not sustainable long term. So looking at a feasibility study for a fire station, and whether that's remodel and renovation in place or something else is a totally open question, but something with the fire station. Like I said, the project we just talked about, and then infrastructure needs in terms of Providence Street Culvert. It's a small bridge program. It's a $2 million project. And then being able to commit yearly additional money on top of Chapter 90 to road repair projects, which the town has done for 3 consecutive years out of free cash with $250,000. But just doing it out of free cash is not the only option. We could also program that into the operating budget, right? And in previous communities, I had $500,000 capital budgets in the operating budget raised on the levy every year just to be able to fund on a as you go basis. So we've got a number of big projects. Then we've got smaller things, right? Replacing stuff that we currently have, right? Replacing fire department apparatus in the next, 5 to 10 years, and replacing highway, dump trucks and things like that. And we just got the loader money and things like that. So we've got smaller things that I think those equipment and vehicle things can be handled with free cash. And I'll talk kind of, this is more of number 7, what fits into the operating budget or funded at town meeting. The cadence I would like would be to, and I said this last year and we just didn't get there. And that's as much my fault as anyone else's, but work through the summer to get a ready to go capital plan for special town meeting, and then free cash gets certified and we're able to expend it at special town meeting. This year we were a little behind on that, and then we were behind on knowing when we were going to get free cash certified. So getting a plan together was difficult and not ideal. But that's what I'd like to get kind of on that cadence. And I was talking recently too that free cash is kind of my default and my primary. This is how we pay for capital. But I want to make sure that we explore all sorts of funding options. So we've got free cash, but appropriating into the general fund within the levy, especially for things like feasibility studies, is a great way to kind of kick off projects and keep that marginal cost to the taxpayer lower. And then off general fund accounts. So things like the Parks Department have, $250,000 in their revolving fund. So how do we use that to supplement rather than supplant sometimes, but to supplement general fund operations? And then other departments like conservation has their notice of intent fees, and like we talked about, the library has their state aid account, which in Mendon has been segregated into its own under the purview of the trustees. So exploring all of those things on top of free cash has been important, or will be important, I should say. But the big things and the short and long-term plans is that the debt exclusion piece on the town side to do debt exclusion management, which has been a goal of the select board. I see the senior community center and the fire station perhaps as the shorter term stuff. And then everything else I think we can do with existing resources. I'm still committed at some point to do debt within the levy. So maybe the rectory project, if we can use other resources, find grant funding, use capital stabilization, free cash, whatever it is, kind of a patchwork sort of thing, and then issue debt within inside the levy. So that's my general approach to capital. I think what also has behooved the town recently has been building maintenance and equipment maintenance increases within the general fund budget. And we've been able to tackle some of the smaller stuff and hopefully stave off some of the larger stuff because of that. So we have that centrally. But actually the two departments in the room right now are the ones who take advantage mostly of that. Council on Aging and Senior Center, or Council on Aging and Library, in a yearly kind of furniture or equipment or whatever refresh, and get that built into the general fund budget, where we have $2, $3, $5, whatever it is, $1,000 a year for the department to be able to keep it up and do that yearly rather than have a $30,000 ask every 10 years or whatever it is.
Jeremy, pause for 1 second. Mike?
Yeah, Jeremy, just your thoughts on a little different in where you have regional school districts. So how do you see us aligning our capital plan with theirs? Because ultimately the funding sources are, whether it be debt or not, are coming from, similar sources.
Yeah, they hopefully they're done for a little bit. In that they just ask for a lot of money. and they were not even asked. They were just granted a lot of money through the debt exclusion. And I was, it was my first time through with Mendon, and I was proud to see the support at both town meeting and the ballot for these projects. But their planning, I hope is, I haven't talked with Jay, so I don't have a great sense of it right now. But what I've gotten from conversations is that they're kind of done for a little while. So in terms of the exclusion management and what the burden is to the taxpayer, they're not going to be additive in the short term. But thinking about it holistically, you're right, is important in that when we just look at excluded debt from the town and we see it falling off year over year through 2030 and beyond, that doesn't include anything that the schools are about to add in starting, right? So I've spoken publicly about what I thought the schools were going to do debt wise, and what they did was different than what I thought. So they borrowed $9 million long term, and that will be on the fiscal 27 tax rate. So we will get assessment from MURSD for debt service, both principal and interest, 2 interest payments and 1 principal payment in fiscal 27 on $9 million. So that needs to be factored into what we think about taxpayer impact of excluded debt going forward. But in terms of new projects, it's a long way of saying I don't know. But in terms of new projects, they're further off than we are for our new projects.
One more question, Jeremy. Carl, go ahead.
Yep. Last fall, there was another presentation of possible locations for a senior center, and the rectory was identified as one of them. Has that been taken off the table, or is that still yet to be determined?
That has not been taken off the table. That is the next item we're going to go to, and I have a cost estimate queued up here to share with the group. So, well, good question is my point. Yeah, we'll get there.
Segue.
Good segue. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, certainly.
You talked about the debt exclusion. So as we go forward, basically, the drop off of the debt exclusion, as we understand that better through the years, as a capital committee, it helps us think about reality of projects and where we start to look at these long-term things, when we would be introducing new ones feasibly to the town without killing them with the large overrides, financially killing them. We still have to do the debt exclusion, but the impact of the taxpayer is less because debt exclusions are dropping off. That window, I think, is important for the individual taxpayers.
Yeah, so this was part of the taxpayer impact study done in 2024 from our financial advisor. So we can see, so this green would be if the senior center had passed and we had debt in fiscal 2026, which of course we don't. So take all the green out of this, but you can see the gray, which is current debt service payments, or actually the red is interest. So the gray is what we currently have. So you can see in 2031, we see a significant drop, and then we lose all of our current excluded debt by 2039. So what I and the select board are interested in is not having kind of whiplash for taxpayers, right? Where you see, right, if we get to 2031 and don't add any additional debt, this will drop down. And then if we get to, 2030, don't add an additional debt, that gray drops down. And then we get to 2031 and that gray drops all the way down here. So this is all, taxpayer savings. But then if 2032, we have a debt exclusion, now all of a sudden folks have a tax bill that is quite a bit larger than it was the year before. So keeping tax bills affordable, but smoothing that impact is important for leadership.
Thank you. And then the school, the recent one from the school that just passed is not in there, but because that goes beyond all those time thresholds. That's our
right, that's that's not on there, right? This was contemplated in the fall of 24. That's when that chart's from. And the way the school, so just to remind everyone, the school has got $30 million roughly in exclusion, split between Upton and Mendon, and then that is also supplemented by MSBA. So you have to do the authorization and the exclusion for the full amount, but MSBA's accelerated roof repair program, or I don't actually know if it's the accelerated program, the MSB participation in the roof repair program knocks it down by $4 or $5 million. And then the cost is apportioned by the town's respective enrollment in the school. So if it's 45% Mendon kids at Nipmuc High, we only get 45% of the assessment, and same with Misco and whatnot.
Jesse.
I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but if this is a question for a different meeting, that's fine. Did you just say that the school district drew down $9 million? And if so, have they already started the construction? Because you wouldn't typically draw down a construction loan until you started construction.
So that's what I had said for a while, that I thought they were going to go short in bond anticipation notes for a year or probably 2 years, and then take it out with long-term debt after that. I don't have that call, and I don't know the specifics of what went into that decision. So I'm not saying it's the wrong one. I don't know well enough. But the school district has borrowed $9 million long, and they have started construction. And I don't know what's going to be out the door in fiscal 26, and perhaps some already is, or a considerable amount already is. But through their 20 something or $30 million authorization, they have borrowed $9 million long already. So in October, the schools will have a principal and interest payment, and then in April they'll have another interest payment, October 26 and April of 27. So the fiscal 27 budget will include an assessment for principal and interest on 1 year of a 30-year borrowing of $9 million.
Okay. I'll ask any more questions on a separate meeting, finance or select board.
Thank you, Jesse. Anything else on topic 3 then?
No. We'll go to topic 4. And the senior center, I guess.
All right. Sorry, I just set up new monitors too, and my mouse is MIA. All right.
On this end, you're doing great there.
All right. Can you all see my
Yes.
shared screen here? All right, great. All right, so Abacus is our engineering firm who did our kind of alternative sites analysis, is how I've been styling it. So this was saying that 3 North Ave was identified as the site, as the greenfield site where we can do new construction. And just kind of a 20-second TikTok. Debt exclusion for a $13.2 million building failed. Accordion the building, come back for an 11 point whatever million dollar, that failed as well. And what this study is saying, okay, we've tried North Ave twice. Are there other sites which would be more financially and operationally viable, which we want to pursue instead? So I got cost estimates back earlier this week. This document's dated the 23rd. I got them back earlier this week. From PMNC. So PMNC was the cost estimator that Michael Petrovic, which was the architect on the feasibility for the senior and community center prior. It's the same cost estimating firm. So we have an apples to apples here. Before I actually get into this, I want to get into what the Abacus and I have talked about as shortcomings in the Petrovic and previous PMNC analysis. So when PMNC was doing the cost estimation for 3 North Ave, they were instructed to do A&E fees based upon what's called a top line. So they did hard construction costs. 10% of that is A&E fees. So they didn't include site work and contingencies and general conditions and mobilization and all of those things, which are generally, you generally do A&E fees off the bottom line, and they did it off the top line. So instead of 10% A&E fees, we ended up with an estimate that was about 7.2% of bottom line costs in A&E fees, which is low. We're not going to be able to hire an architect engineering firm to do a $12 million project for 7% of the cost. Also excluded beyond those A&E fees were the owner's project manager, which can be to 5 to 7% of the project. That was not included in the estimate from PMMC. There was not an owner's construction contingency, and there was not any geotechnical costs associated with it. And this was explicitly noted, but I would, without reading the notes, would have assumed this was included. FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, was not included either. So the number that was presented to taxpayers and from PMNC and by Petrovic underestimated what an architect and engineer would cost, did not include the regulatory requirement of an owner's project manager, did not include a owner's construction contingency, and did not include anything to fill the building. So when we look at these costs comparatively, where it's a low ball to start. So I want to set the tone before we got into things. So this cost, this estimate as a result, because does not include furniture, fixtures, and equipment either. All loose FF&E. Does not include a construction contingency. And I don't believe it has an owner project manager in here either. So main construction costs. So we looked at 3 places initially. We looked at expand in place. We looked at an additive to the library. And then we looked at 8 Morrison Drive, the shell of a building near the fire station. After initial analysis, the 8 Morrison Drive it doesn't work for so many reasons that spending money on cost estimation, I instructed PMMC not to do that. Between site work, access, square footage, parking, it was not feasible. So if anyone wants my write-up, the architect's write-up, talking points, whatever, to talk to the community, say, why don't we put the senior center in the shell of the building on Morrison Drive? It doesn't work for a lot of reasons. The building's too small, and so we need to go up. It doesn't have insulation or flooring or anything. The only cost savings that is there, because the actual envelope of the building is not the expensive part. So the only cost savings we would have there, besides that we own the land, is that the utilities are taken there. But it is not advisable to have a busy place, and I want the senior and community center to be a busy program-centric space, to have their access be right across the fire department apparatus apron either. So a separate access would be desirable, and that's also cost inefficient. Wetlands have been an issue. The grading or the slope has been an issue, and then like I said, there's not enough square footage, so we'd have to go up if we wanted to maintain enough parking. So I say all that to say that is not included in this cost estimate.
For everybody that doesn't know generally where you're talking about, I'm just where in the world?
Yep. So the fire station is on Providence Street,
yes.
Or off of Providence Street. It's Morrison Drive. So
yes.
it's roughly across the street from the highway.
That is okay. That's all I need to know.
Yep.
So it's right next to the place where we were looking at affordable housing.
Yep, exactly. So we would have to bring in a access road through the parcel that the town owns.
Understood. Got it.
And so if you're looking,
costs.
yeah, exactly right. So we're talking.
Well,
about
we did the study there. We did a study next door, so I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have to bring it even further. So it just doesn't work. So I say all of that now to not have to say it 10 times in the future that it's not in the cost estimate now because it just was not feasible.
Agreed.
So 62 Providence Street is the current center. So all of these estimates look at the same 9,644 square feet, which was what I keep saying accordioned building, the second ask as a debt exclusion, what that included. So we're looking at apples to apples in terms of programmatic area, or in terms of gross building area. And then, so we come down here, construction costs, A&E fees. So here we take A&E fees at 10% on the bottom line. So we include overhead, or, OH&P overhead and profit, bonds, insurance, general conditions, all these things. So we take 10% of that rather than 10% of up here, what the initial cost was. And I don't have a ton of familiarity with the initial study, but PM and C, sorry, it's a difficult thing to say together, that they took this approach at the architect's request. So we now requested that they do it in a more typical fashion. So construction, A&E fees, we have some ad alternates down here too, with a generator, a PV system, things like that. We said PV is photovoltaic, so solar panels. We just wanted to have know what these are. So we're looking at $8.5 million at the current site to be able to get the square footage from previous programmatic studies. This also doesn't include owner's project manager, so we'd have to put that on top, but that is consistent across all of them, so we'd have to put that everywhere. 29 North Ave. So sorry, we're looking at, just to keep everybody, $8.5 million at the current site. 29 North Ave, and I have some, schematics and some renderings and stuff in a different report, but 29 North Ave is the current Taft Library. Same ideas. This includes a demolition of the rectory. So in order for this to happen, the study we just did would be rendered moot, and we wouldn't do any of that. So whether that's advisable or not is a policy decision that boards need to have and talk about. But in order to place a senior center at the Taft Public Library, this would be demolishing the senior center. And then the same things, and I should say, these are all assuming a January 27 construction date. So this would be, a fall exclusion, and then starting in the fall or the spring. That's what the escalation has brought us to. And that, with the same approach, is 10.4 million plus OPM, owner's project manager, with the same add-ons here, or the same add alternates here. So, not quite $2 million more than the expand in place. These are agnostic to the very real considerations on parking, about how much you can get one way place or another. And then 3 North Ave. This is the greenfield. So we asked PM and C to bring their costs kind of up to date and make it an apples to apples with everything else. So we moved A&E below the line here. And for the project, which we told voters was $11.5 million a year ago, we're now saying it's $12.5 million. Same building. And this also still does not include furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or an owner's project manager. So if you want new conference tables or televisions or desks or whatever, that's not in this $12.5 million. So that's where we're at with the cost estimates. If you can see in terms of price per square foot, we're at $556 here, and at the new build, and oops, sorry, I thought that would get me to where I wanted to go, and $474 here in terms of base construction costs. But when we talk about all of the other things involved, our price per square foot is higher on a new construction, which Jesse can probably talk to this more intelligibly than I can, but I was surprised to see a $500 per square foot difference and a higher cost for new construction than an addition renovation in place.
Addition to the demo, correct? The current
Sorry?
building would be demo. the current building would be demoed, correct?
No. So the demolition, garage, and space above. So it would just, the current building, we would demo a portion of it and then do an addition and, you know, code only renovation in the existing piece.
Noting also that that didn't include much of the same things you showed that weren't included in this study here.
Yeah, so didn't include furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, and didn't include an OPM, which would be an additional, you know, 5%.
Right.
So 5% of 800,000 would be, or 8 million would be 400,000, 425,000.
Does that address
Right.
the parking? Does that address the parking issues at the current location?
It gets a few more spaces. It doesn't transform parking. It doesn't get you 70 spaces, whatever, but it gets you a few more spaces.
Right
I'm
now,
going to stop sharing just because I'm going to like
Sure.
scroll through this quickly
That's
to find
good.
what I need.
It's good information. If you could share that study back to this COA, that would be good for us to be able to see it. Question I
Yeah,
had
so-
was, it may be missing a few elements. And parking being a key one, as we transit people across Providence Road. Occasionally bus them across the road at our current location with less capacity. That's a different hat on, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All building committee hat.
Yeah, so this study doesn't have the schematics I thought it did. But yeah, if we're just talking the three viable sites, so 62 Providence, expand in place, 25 North Ave is the it says right here, Taphope Library, and 3 North Ave is the new construction. We're looking at a roughly $4 million difference between expand in place and a new construction. And then that, like I said, doesn't include FF&E or OPMs. OPM.
Okay, so that needs to be added, it needs to be added to the mall, so that's fine. But the parking issue is significant, because that's at least $250,000 now. Somewhere around 250,000, if we took the adjacent lot, if possible.
What do you mean by $250,000 for parking? I don't know what you mean.
My rough estimates with a parking company, or an asphalt company, felt it was somewhere around $200,000 to put an adjacent parking lot in that questionable acreage that's right beside the current center. That would alleviate some of the parking issues, short term and long term. That's the one I sent you some things on probably 8 or 9 months ago.
Yeah, I thought we had talked about that being wetlands.
There's a driveway capability across it, and there's a dry spot around the wetland area. He felt the construction people, and on the schematic for the water tables and wetlands would be feasible there. The question has always been, was that really granted to the senior center operation COA 15 years ago? Or is it part of the Providence Road, which was going for affordable housing? But I believe there, around the senior center, there's no space. It's all wetland. The area beyond the senior center, the other side of the well, we need some well exclusions from the Board of Health or Board of Water, wherever they are. But there is an acre there that could be just dedicated to parking.
Yeah, there's an intermittent stream there, it looks like, but there's not flat. I zoomed too much. There is not flagged wetlands as I see it.
Yeah, there wasn't flag wetlands there. We may
That's
have
not
to
to-
do some-
Yeah, so I will say if that does not negate the possibility for you. Just if there are not wetlands there now, and then you go to try to get a permit, and there's an intermittent stream there, we may get flagged wetlands because it goes back to Muddy Brook there in ways that people just perhaps hadn't looked at it before. And now when we go,
which is all fine. But I mean, that's
Yes.
more details coming on. That's going down.
Yeah.
Different committee had. But this is.
so this here, so yeah, this is the senior center here, and we have an intermittent stream on either side of it.
And a question from Carl. Go ahead, Carl.
It's not a question. I'm now switching from Finance Committee to Conservation Commission. One of the roles of the Conservation Commission is to listen to permit applications where people want to work within 100 feet of a wetlands or intermittent stream. And if there is a good reason to do so, the Conservation Commission grants that request. So just because it's within 100 feet, it's not a no, not do anything in there. 25 feet, we would probably rule not to, but if you wanted to work 50 to 100 feet away, it would almost certainly be granted for a town project of this nature.
Thank you, Carl.
Very good, thank you.
One of the,
Thank you,
the
Carl.
question that's come forward is obviously about parking for all the different locations. That's a big one. Jeremy, you also had mentioned the geotechnical question of whether that that cost was not included. Would that apply for all the locations as we are talking of additional construction that's outside of current building parameters?
Good question. I think so. Let me get down to the cost estimate now. Also, this is important. Let me answer a question I know the answer to instead of the one you asked. There is not swing space considered within the estimate for expand in place. So we have we have temporary relocation of existing COA is excluded from this estimate. So what do we do with the senior center in the 18 months or whatever it is that this construction takes? Do we rent space from religious or not-for-profit organizations? Do we go fully online? Do we have stuff upstairs at town hall? Like what do we do?
Fully in line with elders.
Yeah.
Yeah, do we
Yeah.
just have book clubs on Zoom? What do we do? But I don't see any geotechnical or other sort of site work. Let me get down to the more detailed version of this. Superstructure.
Well, this is good news if we can figure out an alternative for how to safely get in and out of the building. Parking.
I mean, you run into a similar parking situation over at the,
Street for our temporary location. It's the church.
So from that, actually, my old hometown had just rebuilt a senior center. So they went through the entire process of the old one having fully demolished and then rebuilt. And they built a whole different program to make sure that they were able to meet the needs of the community. So,
Clearly has to
Town
be.
exact, please.
oh, it's Lyme, Connecticut. So it's a little ways down the road, Lyme and Lyme. They went through that same process. So I have access to be able to pull resources and ideas from them too. So
Wonderful.
depending upon which path
Excellent.
the town goes down, we can start bigger conversations.
Yeah, but one of the elements though, Jeremy, as we go forward, I'd love to see those. I think it's great we found a cheaper solution. But it's got to be able to solve that parking issue. If you don't do a parking issue, you're jeopardizing the safety and well-being of them seniors.
right. And you run into that same problem at the Taft Library's location if you were to make that area
Agreed.
the senior center, because we're already maxed out with our programming
You are,
and then,
you are.
and then adding your parking on top of that, you know what I mean? Like it wouldn't,
Yeah, so the question on parking at the Taft Library was how far we could push back the current parking lot. So there
Okay.
is the septic back there. So there's kind of general agreement that we can add a couple of rows, but adding 12 spots or 14 spots doesn't really make it a suitable double use place.
Right.
And getting to that additional 30 or 40 spots is still currently in question. Which I think you would need, right? So I think you were able to add, 5 or 6 spots through the ARPA funded repavement project that we did. But we would need to add like I said, 30 or 40 spots to make it viable for a dual use building.
Definitely for you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, perfect.
Did they lay out any designs of what the floor spaces would be, or is it just gross square footage they deal with? Gross
So
square footage, yeah, I understand.
yeah, they were refining that final report. So I had asked for the final report for today, and they just too tight of a turnaround for them between cost estimates and this. So I hope to have it in the next couple of weeks. And I'll update the committee and I'll update COA and select board and the trustees and everybody involved. So I don't have it right now, but we have kind of rough schematics. We don't have as detailed of a rendering as Petrovic had provided for the debt exclusion questions, but we have something. And just to remind folks, if you either were involved in the project or up until now, that the firm doing the feasibility or the alternative site analysis here for the senior center, Abacus, was also the architecture firm that did the Taft Public Library when it was constructed and when the library moved from next to Town Hall to over there onto North Ave. So they're really familiar with the space. They also did a conceptual design for a increase, community room there. So they're really familiar with the space, the limitations, and the programmatic requirements of the library.
Okay, good
But
stuff.
they're not the ones who did the study for the library that we paid $25,000 on from a separate engineer architect.
No, that was
Correct.
GRLA. That was for the rectory. Right. That was a different architecture firm. The architecture
Different.
firm I'm referring to is called Abacus,
Yes, I know them. Okay.
whose two principals are both named David, and it confuses me constantly.
That's no fun.
Oh, it's good to see that we get the data.
Excellent.
So I guess, Jeremy, once you finalize the questions that arise in your recommendations, after you get some more information, is to plug some numbers into the forecast. And that would be Amy plugging a number in with you on a projected, after you talk to the select board and talk about alternatives. And the
Yeah.
questions about the parking and relocation.
Yeah, so my plan here would be to come to a council on aging meeting at this point, probably April or May. But I'm taking some time off, expecting our second child in March, so I'm not planning anything there. So probably in April or May, come back, talk to the council on aging, bring those opinions back to select board and say, here's the study, here's the hard numbers, here's the qualitative feedback from council on aging about the quantitative report. And then how do we want to move forward? Do we want to move forward with the debt exclusion question at all? And then when do we want to do that? If we do, when do we want to do that? What option do we want to go with? So it will not be prescriptive from me at all. It will be kind of building from council on aging with prioritization of the capital planning committee. So council on aging, I see like council on aging, we want to do the project, which of these three do we want to do? And then capital planning saying, which of these three do we want to fund? And then select board saying, which of these three do we want to advocate for and put on the ballot? And if those are three different answers, that's difficult. But if those are, if we need to joint board meetings or something like that, to get to a consensus, then maybe. But my first step is to come to council on aging with a unified report.
Wasn't Groundhog Day Monday?
Yes.
I could have sworn last time I talked to you, you said you were expecting a child. Feels like it's Groundhog Day today.
I was like, I definitely didn't promise this report like before, did I? No, you're not supposed to. No, so maybe I was, but now it's imminent, and I have a better plan for the senior center than I do my personal
No, it
life,
was your
so-
first. I think it was your first child.
Oh no, I had a 9-month-old when I started here, so
Oh, okay.
Um, it sometimes it feels like there's, you know, four
I gotta
toddlers,
take better
but it's
notes.
just-
Seems like
Okay.
Jeremy's always having children.
We're running a bit late.
That's good. That's topic 4, and topic 5 is already completed. Topic 6.
Update, any other major updates have you received, Jeremy, from the department managers or glimmers coming down the pike? Just maybe run down. Any other-
So this was a little bit what I talked about before about the building side of things, not too much. It's more equipment and more replacement rather than additive. So I will say the fire department received its boat today or yesterday. I got a picture of it today. It looks great. So we're exploring, talking with facilities and parks about how you know, maybe we site it closer to the lake rather than at the fire station. So that's kind of a TBD. But we're glad to have that and that resource. I will say the fire department has a ladder truck, and in, you know, the next decade they're going to want a replacement for the ladder truck. So even though we got a great deal on it to begin with, they're now accustomed to having a ladder truck and are going to want to replace that going forward.
Can we enjoy that one for a little while before we start talking about the next?
That's why I said a decade. They are not clamoring for one.
I thought you only built 2 stories.
I know. I said town hall is the tallest building that we have, but it's great for laterals, and it's great for the zoo skyfire. Yeah, exactly.
Good for flags, good for parades. I think it's wonderful.
Good night, everybody.
Having been involved
Have a good night,
specifically with rescues at the zoo, it's a good thing to have.
Okay. I'm only kidding.
And then with the fire department's desire, and with this, hopefully, you know, with the select board's support to put additional FTE in the fire department to increase their shift level staffing, we're going to see increases in things like turnout gear and you know, equipment in the fire department. So that may require a large one-time infusion, and then a slightly smaller year-over-year infusion. And then on the budget side, not a capital really side, but on a budget side, we're going to see increase in request for grounds maintenance, right? We have a full-time grounds foreman in the highway grounds and facilities department. So empowering that person to, you know, give them a budget and do some things. So from that, I imagine we'll see some capital that comes out of that. There will definitely be some things at Memorial Field that have yet to be identified, but that will be. I've harped already, even before knowing what the projects are, harped already about that will should be a cost sharing between the Parks Revolving Fund and the general fund, whether it's free cash or operating money. So we'll see some more things at parks, but hopeful for the cost sharing sorts of stuff. And then the big things we saw are here that we talked about. We've got a few town hall things. So last town meeting funded climate control for the second floor. We got 2 offices upstairs that don't have heating or cooling, so have space heaters and window units, which are not the best way to do anything. That might be a little more expensive than we initially anticipated. We only have 1 quote in now. We're still getting a couple more. But we also have CPA money to do that, and windows and some building envelope stuff. And we'll be looking at the old Taft Library. The second floor is this really beautiful space that is currently used for essentially plans and records retention. So we would be looking at utilizing that space for perhaps additional offices or conference space for the town. So there might be a request once we scope it. I don't have a scope for it yet. So once we scope it, then I'll bring it to this committee and hopefully get something for special town meeting. So this will be my soft launch too. I have 13 direct reports, down from 16 because we rolled a few. So my budget request is going to include another senior level administrator, whether it's a senior director or an assistant town administrator or something. And we're going to need office space for that. So those are the facility side. Those are small level available to be funded from existing resources, either in free cash, CPA, or the operating budget. In terms of debt exclusion stuff, it's what we talked about earlier. Nothing new tonight.
No other surprises, okay.
You know, that a lot of that hits also on number 7, which is the operating budget for funds at the ATM. So, okay. Then
Yeah,
the next one.
I was hopeful that we were going to start our budget meetings next week, and I'm kind of not quite there. So we're the week after. So that'll include some capital requests in that. And then really I want to get us on a cadence for special town meeting. So even if we close the year with $500,700,000, whatever is in free cash, I'm okay with that. In that every time I go to a conference about, economic outlooks from both the state and the federal level, people just kind of shrug their shoulders. I'm like, well, it depends what Washington does. So, going into the fall, knowing that we have a really big cushion is important, or is useful, not important, is useful. Also, the schools, we got a $0 increase from fiscal 25 to 26, just the way their funding formula worked. Which is obviously not sustainable for them. So we've budgeted a 4% increase for them for 26 through 20, from 26 to 27. Their request is going to be larger than that. So there is the possibility that we would use existing resources to kind of, I use the word ramp funding a lot, but kind of be a wedge, be a ramp from 27, use free cash or stabilization to be able to fund the schools and avoid or reduce an override request, and then use all or most of new growth and Prop 2.5 growth in 28 to be able to backfill that one-time funding use. So I say that piece to say, and it's not capital in any sense, but I say that piece to say, keeping some powder dry is useful in a holistic approach.
Yes. Okay, I think it's, Mike, generally from the select board, you're part of this liaison to this committee. Any kind of additional inputs or major issues you see facing us, or new things that we don't know about?
No, I just recapped what Mike told me yesterday, so that should do it.
Yeah, I think Jeremy covered it.
Just checking.
No, I didn't mean to step on your toes. I was checking.
No. I mean, I think we literally talked through most of those issues just last night, and I think we're kind of full steam into budget now. And I did say last night, Phil, that just because we have some money doesn't mean we have to spend it unless we absolutely need the capital. I think we want to be somewhat conservative and focus more on the fall and get into that cadence, the annual cadence, so it becomes more of a regular procedure.
Totally, I think there's a couple of pieces that we had loose. One was around the senior center and direction, and Jeremy's got some good findings there. What alternatives, what options, so we can work on that moving forward. We don't need to solve it for this fall, but we need to solve that problem and put it out in the calendar from a capital standpoint.
And I just want to say, I'm not saying we don't put any capital. I mean, I think from the road, this highway standpoint, Jeremy, that piece of equipment, I think it's in the queue now that allows John to do some interim repair.
Head, yeah.
So it's not full reclamation, which is the most expensive road repair, and it's not, hand and shovel to fix potholes. It gives us a lot more flexibility to not outsource, but have the highway guys do some decent road repair on their own. I think there's a milling tool that might be in queue already. That'd be one I would say we should look hard at that one.
So to refresh everybody, so we have a multi-function tracklet. It's like we use it for lots of stuff. It's very modular. And one of the modular pieces is to be able to put a milling head on it, and go and mill smaller portions of road, and then use our hot box to do hot mix laid in place, rather than bringing in a full depth reclamation with the whole company that comes in, and it's $500,000 a mile and that kind of thing. Like, no, we spend 200 grand on our own head and then a small marginal cost for the materials. I mean, we're able to do, a couple hundred yards of one side of a street or something at a fraction of the cost of what a full depth reclamation would be. So the highway superintendent had postulated to spend Chapter 90 funds on this piece of equipment. But I always want to spend the most restrictive money first. So I want to spend restrictive money on roadway stuff and then use the unrestricted money, which is free cash. We can use it for any lawful municipal use on the additive thing. So I would like to keep Chapter 90 money on the material and on the labor to actually do roads, namely Hartford Avenue East. That's number one in the spring. So tell your friends. And then buy this piece of equipment through a capital budget. And then the other piece on free cash is not a capital expenditure, but it has an impact on free cash, which this group should just be aware of. The select board yesterday authorized the highway superintendent to deficit spend in the snow and ice removal account up to $125,000. So we have $194,000 snow and ice removal budget. And for folks who don't, transit and municipal finance every day, snow and ice removal is the only department budget in which we're allowed to deficit spend within a current fiscal year, as long as we budget the same amount as the year prior. So we regularly, or at least in winters like this, deficit spend in snow and ice. And then we have an option to either fund it with free cash at the end of the fiscal year, or raise it on the levy in the next fiscal year. So if we raise it on the levy in the next fiscal year, that reduces the amount available to our operating budget. So my recommendation will be to use free cash to plug this hole right now, and then increase the snow and ice budget next year. But this winter is anomalous compared to the last 5. So we'll be using free cash probably in the $100,000 or so range to be able to fund that deficit. And if we don't use free cash, what we'll do is we'll transfer surpluses from the current year operating budget into snow and ice, and that will reduce our free cash later. So it has the same effect come September. Net.
I mean, as a practice, I think this is what we generally do. I mean, we deficit spend every time a year I've been on the board. We probably deficit spend, and we do that also so we come out of the season with like a full salt shed, so that we're ahead of the curve for the next season. And we generally use available free cash through ATM to kind of pay that off and kind of get us back on track.
And I will say, definitely, this is very normal. And we add a little bit to the snow budget yearly. I will say, so we've got $194,000 snow and ice removal budget. When I was in the city of Attleboro, which is 45,000 people, $168 million budget when I was there 5 years ago. Our snow and ice removal budget was under $100,000. So it was like deficit spend by like $250,000, $300,000 every year. So I think the town does a reasonable job of saying in a normal winter or a best scenario winter, this is what we're going to spend. Whereas other communities are like, just same as last year's since 1995. And we'll figure it out with free cash. So
we can't reduce that line item, Jeremy, right? I mean, if we can't reduce that line item going forward and still deficit spend. So 194 is the base going forward. Right. And if we add to it, that'll be the new base. So we can continue to deficit spend.
Yeah, you can cut it, but then you can't deficit spend until a 2-year lag, right? So if it went from 194 to 100 in 27, we couldn't deficit spend. But then if we kept it 100 into 28, then you could deficit spend in 28. So it would just be a year worth of pain, but I would never recommend that.
Okay. Awesome. So get a good input, and good understanding of what's coming down the pike. That kind of helps. Next quick one. I electronically sent out and passed out here the recommendation that Jesse provided, that we use some common sense forms, and the library committee did actually execute on that form. It was also distributed by email, I believe, to all of you. So I think we should need to move to adopt a form like this. Or I also added the form that Jeremy uses for just additional spending requests. I kind of like what Jesse dug up from, one of his colleagues that went to a 101, municipal, accounting class or something. Is that correct, Jesse? Do you remember that?
I don't.
It was a good form.
So it was the project detail sheet, the spreadsheet that kind of gave a project title, department description, justification, and a picture. The nice part that I liked about it is it allowed us to at least give an idea of what it could cost projected out. So if the department head is smart enough to and recognizes that this isn't a this year, but it's a 3 or 4 year down the road, we can capture it, see it, and have a good place to kind of work from.
This would move away from the system that Mike and Jeremy and everybody's updated. What's the chair file? No, I think it's supplemental information that a department manager would give to us and or to Jeremy as they move a request forward.
Sure, and I look at this as a way of this could be it's the information that needs to go into the database anyway.
Right.
So this is more just a tool that allows us to have a kind of a common picture when they do come and sit down with us and say, here's what's going on, we know what we're looking at, and it's a simple thing. But we stole it from the library perspective just to give it a try, because we had the draft, and wanted to see how it shook out.
So that was a form I'd like to close in on. We don't have to close on it now, but I'd like to have Jeremy's input on it and, because he'll be requesting that from department leads and or boards.
It was helpful from the library perspective when we sat down with the subcommittee to start that initial discussion of what we needed to be able to present. So it was definitely a useful tool for us.
And actually, maybe for just ease, we don't vote on anything today, but we say that we use this as a draft and we modify, kind of sitting down amongst the three of us and with Jeremy on, make sure we're getting each nugget for our data collection perspective. The part that I'm worried about is that I don't want folks just to think, hey, I fill out this form and I'm done. That I want to make sure that we keep in the department heads' minds that this is a tool to help us, but they still have the obligation to make sure that that information is getting into the system. But I don't know, that's just my opinion.
To take just a few minutes further, if I can just share my screen for a second, am I allowed to?
Yeah, please do.
We'll let you do that, Jesse.
So I've said this many times, but I've never actually showed anybody. Just in the HUD world, HUD requires capital needs assessments on all public housing agencies, on all HUD buildings, things like that. And it's just a guide, basically. And when I get to the 20-year schedule is where I feel like we're always talking sort of in a vacuum and things are coming up that we're not necessarily planning on, and we're rushing to a vote. Where if we could see the town by using these capital expenditure forms, if they actually rolled up, I'm talking about a roll up into the whole town that Jeremy's pointed out is funding agnostic. So typically you'll have a reserve fund and you plan out your 20-year schedule based on the amount of reserves in your reserve fund. It can't work the same way as it would for a normal municipal building or publicly owned building. It can't work the same exact way. It has to be funding agnostic, but at least you'd see the needs of the town and broken out by either department or building or however it needs to be broken out. So just a quick example is just it breaks it into 3 separate areas. Critical needs are things that are either accessibility related or life safety related. Those are things that need to be done today. We got to vote on them today. They got to get done. And then we have things that we call the non-critical, which are things that we need to get done in this fiscal year. So deferred maintenance, physical deficiencies, and any PM that needs to be done over the next year within this fiscal year or around that 1 year horizon. And then those all roll up into this 20-year schedule. So you see how it's like site, structural, mechanical. That could actually be broken out by department or by region or building, however it needs, zone, however it needs to be. And then it's broken out by a 20-year schedule. So then it scrolls down and you have all of your uninflated costs and your inflated costs based on things that we've discussed, based on things that we voted on. You know, they'll if we all voted for, we in quotes, if it was voted that we would do a library renovation, that would make its way into a roll-up for the town. And then we could see, okay, that's in year 2031. And you'd be able to just see in a chart the whole town and what we're planning. It feels like we're not there. And I've mentioned this a few times, and I felt the need to just show you what I thought what I've been seeing in my head that would, I think, be a great tool for us to use. Not necessarily in this format, but that's just the thought process that I keep. I've mentioned it a few times. I just couldn't show you.
No, understand that, and thanks for sharing that. I think that's really cool. Do you have one that's neutered or like clean so that we could share it amongst the team?
Yeah, I mean, that is set up for just one bill. I could manipulate it into anything that you'd want and make it neutered, as you say. Yeah, it's just the idea that I wanted to visually point out and say, would we all think that this might be where we'd want to go and have everything really roll up? It's probably a long-term vision. It's not something for today, but I had mentioned it to Jeremy. I had mentioned it in a few different meetings, and I just haven't been at my computer to actually show you. So I just wanted to point out what I've mentioned a few times.
Well, I think it's a great direction because some of these things you can project out there. Useful life, the other things you're talking about. You know that you're going to replace these things over the next
Correct.
20 years. And then you begin to see that cumulatively, and as you add new things into it, you understand.
It's just a visual that you can look at during meetings where you're voting and you have an optic that you're looking at to show you, you know, instead of searching through notes and asking other people, it's all there on your screen. Everybody's making informed decisions with something that's visually present is how I thought we could get there at some point.
Jesse, if you could mock something up, because I think that's the other end of the piece that the library just used. If you look at the entry of something into the system.
Yeah.
Which is a descriptive view of the first conception of the idea or need.
Yeah. That
would dovetail into this aggregation system, I'll call it, because it's bringing departments, let's say departments for our sake. They may have multiple buildings with departments. They may have multiple elements like, you know, plant and facilities and fleets and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And that would be the roll-up that these things would fall into. And then, Jesse, your roll-up would give you the long-range view that Jeremy could have in the select board, and all of us say, here's where the town's going. And if you drop a bubble in there, what blows up?
Or how does it push other things off? Yeah, I love it. I think that's awesome.
Can you do a mock-up on that, Jesse?
Again, it'll just be a visual. I feel like if it really was rolled out, it would have to be almost like each department keeps one of these, their critical needs, their non-critical needs, and then their 20-year schedule that could potentially roll up to a town-wide 20-year schedule. You know,
I think today
it could even bolt into what I believe Jonathan's using within the highway department. I think their system does some sort of analysis like this. I may be wrong, but that's how I feel it was described in when they were purchasing the software. I think it does project, but I may be wrong.
Jeremy, let me ask you, Is this any value to you as we try to move the front end entry point into a back end projection? I know we're not at a 20-year market. We're still trying to figure out 3 and 5.
Yeah, I've said a couple of times, anything kind of beyond 5 years on a revenue expenditure sense doesn't quite make sense for municipality. But in terms of our physical plant, it does, because so we can be longer horizon here and it be more useful than saying what's state aid going to look like in 2040.
My economics
so-
teacher said in the long run, we're all dead. So yeah, I mean, it could be a 5-year roll up. It could be a 10-year roll up, you know, like it doesn't, my idea is simply like we need to have at least a few years in front of us to make informed decisions sometimes, so that it just feels like we're reactive and not proactive sometimes with some of these decisions.
We definitely are. We also had similar economics teachers who might said, if the U.S. defaults on a treasury, the only currency that matters is shotgun shells and water. So yeah, same sort of idea about the long run. Yeah, so I think this tool is useful. I think, you know, it all comes down to execution, right? Because we're garbage in, garbage out. So we need folks to, you know, and that comes down to me impressing on them, saying this is important. You need to do that. So yeah, Jesse, I think we can meet one-on-one, so I can make sure I understand so I can understand how to make this most useful to people. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth exploring. We do something like this now. This is just a little bit more in depth.
I know we've talked about it. I just had it in front of me and I'm like, I need to just show them what I keep kind of pointing out.
Yeah,
words
for sure.
So I guess if you two guys, as action items, we should wrap this up. It's getting really late. If you two guys can kind of communicate along the way, and maybe the roll up, Jeremy's a 5-year with a 10-year on facility, you know, a little run on bigger things. But that's the point, to bring these things together, single view, pain would be wonderful. And if we could take a look at the form that came out, the project form that the library used, and I sent out to the team, and say, and Jeremy, I'd ask you to look at that and see what other insights you'd like to throw to that to meet your needs, because you're going to have to adopt it through your departments. Because the ask is going to be for the people who want to request. So think about what we found in this form that the library group used and what your needs are, and see if you can come back with a recommendation and maybe circulate via email just as a working document.
And I'll extract it because we actually have the Excel sheet. I'll just shoot that to everyone in the group so that we've got the.
Oh, good. Excellent. Okay. Any more items? I don't believe so, except the next meeting.
Next meeting schedule.
Jeremy, I'll let you kind of drive the bus on what you need. You need anything for the ATM that needs us involved with it?
We're gonna go through the operating budget stuff. So annual town meeting, if you know, you should follow the town's Facebook page if you don't, but annual town and watch every select board meeting. But the annual town meeting is set for May 12th. It's a Tuesday, the Tuesday before the annual town election. And the warrant closes April 16th. So we're going to go through budget stuff in the second half of February here, in terms of operating budget. So then if we can schedule something for, you know, early April, late March, early April, to get a second bite at this and say, what's the prioritization of this committee that we can take back to select board and say, here's the 2 or 3 things we want to fund at annual town meeting. But then my goal would be a more robust, I feel like I keep kicking the can here, but I promise there's a real plan, a more robust and delineated process for capital throughout the summer and early fall months in advance of special town meeting in November.
Okay. I'll throw out a date then. How about March 26th? That's a Thursday.
Same time, same place?
Same time, same place, because the following week is the split week of part March, part April. And then if something changes or we need a change, we can adopt as we go forward.
26th?
Yep.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
okay
I
then.
would, yeah, I would join virtually, but I'm available to join virtually for sure.
I was gonna say, when's the baby coming?
You have a
Due
caveat
March
that you
11th,
like-
so we'll see, but I can hop, I can hop on virtually for sure.
We'll get you some coffee for the meeting.
You can always just send us notes. Don't ever worry about that family first. Not sure about someone
Thank you.
else missing. I'm just kidding.
I've raised many families. We're good.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
Then
Mike Goddard referred to newborns as potted plants earlier. So yeah, he'll still be a potted plant at that point. So it'll be.
Yeah, Jeremy,
I did it in the nicest way possible.
Yes, it was an endearing potted plant. Yes.
Hey, Jeremy, if we don't see you between here and then, good luck and all that stuff.
Yes,
And
definitely,
really,
good luck.
the second shot, it's a piece of cake. You've already had one.
you
It's no
guys,
big deal.
you guys are too funny. I'm gonna put forward a motion to adjourn.
On that note.
I second it.
We'll
Roll call, please. All in
I'm gonna
favor?
abstain from discussion. Yeah.
Jesse Curl, right?
James Thatch, aye.
Bill Sipley. Aye.
Thank you all. Thanks for dealing with the technological challenges and whatnot. I'm gonna stop recording here. I hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for the drill down. I appreciate it. Got some insight.
Thanks, guys. And thanks for the
Good night,
library.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. You did a good job.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us. We
No, no.
greatly appreciate it.